As we think back to last year, 2024 was filled with some remarkable stories and milestones. To flourish together as a community in 2025, the Niagara Region continues to invest in the vital programs and services that we need to thrive. Joining me in the studio is no stranger to discuss the highlights of 2024 is Regional Chair Jim Bradley. Jim, good morning.
Great to be with you today.
Happy New Year.
And to you as well, and to everybody watching.
And welcome to The Source. The region had several priorities for 2024, one of them being making Niagara a green and resilient region. What do we do to prepare to adapt to climate change, Jim?
Well, that's an interesting point when you use the term adapt, because there's two ways of looking at it. One is you don't want to contribute to it. So everything you're doing, you look at how can we do something in a greener way than you might have before, one that has less impact on the environment. And we're doing that in every department. But also, you have to recognize we don't control that entirely. The world is a big place, and global warming is contributed to, yes, a little bit by us, but by many others. So we have to adapt. Now when you're, for instance, building new capacity for water, wastewater, things of that nature, you now have to build a much larger capacity. So all the changes are there to adapt to climatic changes that are taking place. Clearly now you see more flooding around the world taking place. You see fires taking place, things of that nature. So all the decisions we make have to look at two things. One, how can we have a lesser impact? And second, what can we do in each of the departments to ensure that we're prepared when there is some kind of climatic disaster happening, as can happen anywhere in the world.
The word inclusivity is very important to the region. What opportunities or partnerships were developed to make Niagara a safe and equitable region?
Well, we have a committee for that, for one thing, who gives us advice that I think is very valuable. We've had people coming from around the world to Niagara now. Canada is a much changed place than it would have been 2 generations ago, for instance, where most of the immigration would have come from Europe, for instance, or from Great Britain, and places of that nature. Now it comes from virtually around the world. So you'll see reflected in the workforce a much wider variety of people from around the world who are there. We make sure that when we're doing our hiring, for instance, obviously the people have to be very qualified, but we want to give a good chance for people from a variety of backgrounds to be hired. And on our agencies, boards, and commissions, we want to ensure that they reflect the actual population that we have today, as opposed to what it might have been a generation or two ago. I think of the police board, for instance, now, which has people of different backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, different races. A lot more now in terms of the contribution of women to politics and to elected representation. When I first got elected to the Ontario legislature, for instance, there might be a half a dozen women in the legislature at that time. Well, now it's getting close to half. So we try to make sure that everybody who comes to the Niagara region can feel welcome here in the Niagara region, and that's by including them in all aspects of our life.
Let's bring up the B word, business. Creating jobs and supporting a skilled workforce is another important priority. What was done to help our transportation network in 2025, or what's going to help?
We now have regional transportation so that people can now travel, not extensively necessarily yet, because we have to build on that, but from one end of the Niagara Peninsula to the other, from one end of the Niagara region to the other. And it has its early challenges, of course, when you're going from individual transit systems within communities to a region-wide one, but it's now allowing people to get around the region much better. The business community appreciates it, and the people who require public transit appreciate it.
Jim, I was talking to a mayor of another municipality years ago who was bringing transportation to his community. It was a brand new thing, and he said marketing was the most important tool to get that going, because once a resident buys a car, they're committed to that for 10 years. Any marketing ploys that they're doing to try and get people to get on these buses?
Yes, the Transit Commission is doing that all the time. They're rebranding, they have outreach using social media, using traditional media, just communicating with people directly. The best they can do, though, is provide an excellent service. A service that's affordable, first of all, and second, is reliable. And third is extensive enough that people can go from one place to another in a reasonable amount of time and know that there's going to be a bus there when they need it. And we're dealing with buses in ours. We don't have subways or anything of that nature. So the Regional Transit Commission is separate from the region itself. It's independent from the region, but it's working very hard. And that was a major decision made by Regional Council to ensure that we have a transit system that is regional as opposed to confined to individual municipalities.
Is it working?
It is working, but it's got its bugs, and the Commission is trying to, extend the service. It has its bugs that happen from time to time, but the important thing is to address those, and so they communicate with the people who use the system and get some advice for them on how it can be better used. But right now there are people who are very happy, students particularly. Brock and Niagara College students in particular are very dependent upon the service, and the business community likes it as well, because there are people now who can to go to the various job opportunities that they have using public transit, because not everybody has a personal vehicle. They're expensive to buy and they're expensive to operate.
And they're expensive to maintain. 2025, what are the region's top priorities?
Well, we're looking at economic development. The Asai-Kasai development in Port Colborne is huge. Electric vehicles, battery separator plant there. It's going to employ 300 people directly. There's going to be a lot of spin-off for us there. And when people see that a company of that nature from Japan is choosing the Niagara region to invest in, it brings others in as well. So economic development is very important. We want to ensure that businesses will feel welcome here, that they'll get the kind of service that they want from the local municipality, and that's what they're getting. We work in cooperation with the federal and provincial government as well, and luring businesses here and ensuring that they stay here. So that's exceedingly important. Housing and homelessness is a major challenge for almost every municipality in the world these days. And so we're trying to find some short-term and longer-term solutions to those who find themselves without a home to go to. So we have shelters. There's a very significant large one, 50 units in St. Catharines and one in Welland now. And our regional housing department itself is working to have more accommodation. The best thing, of course, is to ensure that people are able to be housed on a permanent basis. So that we're working with the provincial and federal government there, who really have more responsibility financially. But that's one of our major goals, is to try to deal with a challenge that hits municipalities around the world.
Going to be a busy 2025. Jim, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.